I left my daughter's dentist appointment feeling off. Nothing dramatic happened. Nobody yelled at me. Nobody told me I was a bad mom. Honestly, if someone had heard the conversation, they probably wouldn't have thought twice about it. The dentist and I had started talking about our daughters. Her little girl is a year younger than mine. She's already in school, and not just any school, one of the most prestigious schools in our area. Then she asked about my daughter. I told her we hadn't sent her yet. We talked for another minute or two. I smiled, she smiled, the appointment ended, and then I got in my car. And I started questioning myself. Should she already be in school? Am I behind? Am I holding her back? Should I be looking at different schools? And here's the strange part. Nothing about my daughter had changed. Nothing about our family had changed. Nothing about our reasons had changed. The only thing that changed was that someone else's decision quietly made me question my own. And that fascinated me. Hi, welcome back to Pearls of Motherhood. I'm Diana. This season, we've been asking one big question. How do we build a version of motherhood that actually fits us? We've questioned expectations, we've redefined success, we've grieved the mothers we thought we'd become. Today, I want to explore something that quietly sits underneath all of those conversations. Approval. Because I don't think moms are really chasing perfection. I think we're chasing reassurance. So I wrote in my journal after that appointment, the idea of approval is weird, especially as a mom. Because here's what I've noticed. You talk to another mom hoping to connect, maybe exchange ideas, maybe laugh, maybe hear, oh gosh, that's us too. Instead, sometimes the conversation quietly becomes a comparison. If you don't make the same choices, you leave wondering if you're doing something wrong. If you do make the same choices, you've just reinforced what they already believed. Approval is weird like that. It's strange. It never lasts very long. To be honest, I've always second guessed myself. Motherhood didn't create that. It just amplified it. Before motherhood, if I made a bad decision, I usually dealt with the consequences. I would pivot. I could adapt. I could start over. Motherhood changed the equation. Now every decision feels connected to someone I love more than myself. And that's really heavy. Sometimes I wonder if that's why motherhood feels so exhausting. Not because there are so many decisions, but because every decision feels really, really important. Sunscreen, shoes, school, speech, food, sleep, you know the list. And some of those matter tremendously, don't get me wrong, but some honestly don't. But when you're responsible for a little person, they can feel really enormous. Here's what I kept coming back to. When I walked into that dentist's office, I was at peace with our decision. When I walked out, I wasn't. But our decision hadn't changed, mine and my husband's. Only my confidence had changed. And that realization really stopped me in my tracks. How could one conversation outweigh months of thoughtful consideration? Then I started noticing something else. Have you ever caught yourself explaining a parenting decision that nobody questioned? You say, oh, we're only doing this because, or you say, I promise she's usually, or our pediatrician recommended, or I use this one a lot. We did a lot of research. To be honest, who are we talking to? Nobody asked. And yet there we are building a case, almost like we're standing in an invisible courtroom trying to prove we're good moms. And that made me wonder, why? So I did what I always do. I went researching, right? It turns out psychologist Leon Festinger describes something called social comparison theory. When humans are uncertain, we naturally compare ourselves to other people. That's totally normal. It's how we've always learned. Then I started reading about mattress sense. Researchers describe becoming a mother as a complete identity transformation. And when our identity is changing, our brains naturally become more sensitive to feedback. Suddenly, every opinion feels like data. Every confident mom feels like she knows something we don't. The research wasn't telling me I lacked confidence. It was telling me uncertainty is part of becoming. Honestly, that made me feel a little bit kinder towards myself. So I thought back to the dentist. She wasn't trying to make me feel less than. She was just sharing her family's story. I was the one who internally turned it into a verdict on my decision. And that realization was uncomfortable, but it was also freeing because if I had the power to interpret it that way, maybe I had the power to interpret it differently. This reminds me of a message we received recently. Here's some listener mail. Jamie from Atlanta writes, "Hi, Diana and Tessie. I feel like every time I leave a playgroup, I come home wondering if I'm doing something wrong. Someone is potty training earlier than us. Someone else's child already reads. Someone is in 3 activities. Someone is homeschooling. Someone says preschool is essential. I don't even know what I believe anymore. I just know I feel like I'm behind. How do you stop comparing?" First of all, Jamie, thank you for asking that because I don't think you're really asking, how do I stop comparing? I think you're asking, how do I stop letting comparison steal my peace? And I don't know if comparison ever completely goes away because we're human. We notice, we observe, we learn. The question isn't whether comparison happens. The question is, what do we do with it? I've started wondering if maybe we're looking for the wrong thing. Maybe what we really want isn't approval. Maybe it's connection. Connection sounds like, oh, we've been there too. Approval sounds like, oh, you're doing it right. One builds community, the other quietly creates winners and losers. There's something Tessie has said for years that keeps coming back to me. She's always said, "You're a good mom because you care." I used to hear that as comfort. Now I hear it as a truth. Maybe second guessing ourselves isn't proof that we're failing. Maybe it's proof that this matters deeply to us. The goal isn't to stop caring. The goal is to stop believing that caring requires everyone else's approval. I keep thinking about that drive home from the dentist. My daughter was still the same little girl she had been an hour earlier. She was still curious, still joyful, still very deeply loved. Nothing about her had changed. The only thing that had changed was the story I was telling myself. And maybe that's the invitation for all of us today. The next time someone shares a parenting choice that's different from yours, maybe it isn't a test. Maybe it isn't a competition. Maybe it isn't evidence that you're behind. Maybe it's simply another family making the best decision they can with the child they know and the values they hold. Just like you are. I don't think peace comes from everyone agreeing with us. I think peace comes from knowing we've made a thoughtful decision, remaining humble enough to learn and trusting ourselves enough that one conversation can't undo everything we already know. Because here's the beautiful thing. Your child doesn't need the mom with the most approval. They need the mom who knows them. And nobody knows your child quite like you do. If today's conversation resonated with you, we'd love to hear from you. When was the last time someone else's parenting choice made you question your own? Or maybe you've had the opposite experience. A moment when you finally stopped seeking approval and found peace in doing what was right for your family. Share your story with us. You can email us at ideas@pearlsofmotherhood.com or connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, or Threads at Pomcast. That's POMCASTS. Some of our favorite conversations and even future listener mail begin with messages from moms just like you. If this episode encouraged you, consider sharing it with another mom who could use the reminder that thoughtful motherhood doesn't require unanimous approval. Until next time, remember, you do you, mama. Talk to you soon. Bye.